Welcome to the Healthy Compulsive Project podcast, where you can take a deep dive to explore the pitfalls and potential of the obsessive compulsive personality, offering hope and help for perfectionists, workaholics, micromanagers, type A personality, and control freaks. Hello everyone, Gary Trosclair here, psychotherapist, Jungian psychoanalyst, and author of the Healthy Compulsive Project book, blog, and podcast. Ever wonder where all of your compulsive energy comes from? I disagree with the assumption that it's all due to adverse circumstances, neurotic tendencies, or a pathological need for control. I believe that much of that energy is intended for something more constructive and fulfilling, what Carl Jung referred to as individuation. It's also known as self-realization, and if this urge is blocked, you may find yourself obsessive and compulsive about all sorts of stuff that does not fulfill you. Join me in this episode as we investigate the energy which can lead us to wholeness or to neurotic behavior. This is episode 86 of the Healthy Compulsive Project podcast, The Hidden Drive Behind Compulsive Behavior, Carl Jung's Path to Wholeness. As with many other subjects, Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung had a refreshingly creative take on compulsive behavior. Here are his two basic ideas. 1. We have a deep, healthy, and compulsive urge to individuate, to develop our psychological potential through self-realization. And 2. If that urge is blocked, we resort to neurotic, unhealthy compulsive behavior. One of Jung's greatest contributions to psychotherapy was the idea that it should not only help us heal from the past, but it should also enlist our natural propensity to move into the future by evolving psychologically. He asked not just why we have symptoms, but also what the symptoms are for. Where do they lead us? His perspective sheds a great deal of light on the forward-leaning compulsive personality and how to cultivate it. People who are compulsive, I would say, have a particularly strong urge to individuate. They are driven, and that often leads to extremes. While this urge to evolve might have been obvious to Jung, the rest of us trying to scrape by may not see it. Yet, start to watch for this drive, and you'll see that it was hiding in plain sight all along. We want to grow, but aversive conditions may lead us to grow sideways. Jung wrote that this urge to individuate is, and here I quote, a law of nature and thus of invincible power, close quote. He was saying that we have an instinct to develop as much of our unique potential as possible and to move toward wholeness. Individuation means to make one, to bring the various parts of the personality into harmony. He used the image of the mandala, a squared circle, to describe this process. He felt that the mandala illustrates our natural tendency to develop our personality around a central point, a point which becomes a source of energy. And here I quote again, "The energy of the central point is manifested in the almost irresistible compulsion and urge to become what one is, just as every organism is driven to assume the form that is characteristic of its nature, no matter what the circumstances." That's the end of the quote. Well, that's just swell, but what happens to that energy when it's blocked? We'll get to that. Jung believed that we achieve individuation through a balancing process. We ascend the psychological stairs by putting the left foot forward and then the right foot, left then right. We integrate contrasting parts of the personality in turn. We exercise one aspect of our personality first and then the other, eventually getting them to work together. For example, we balance pursuing career ambitions with developing good relationships, nurturing the body with cultivating the mind, planning the future with savoring the moment. Jung often stressed the importance of holding the tension of the opposites. We need to think in terms of both and rather than either or when choosing how to live. Think about a charioteer taking the reins of his two horses. So long as he balances left and right, they move forward. Like a charioteer, we balance the different urges that come from within, masculine and feminine, spiritual and earthly, reason and feeling, assertiveness, and receptiveness. This balancing act defines individuation. For people with obsessive-compulsive tendencies, this could mean balancing the active and reflective parts, leader and follower parts, and driven and accepting parts. But just to be clear, Jung's suggestion was not for compromise, not for bland milk toast. It was to live each side to the fullest extent possible. This all sounds well and good, but most people don't wake up in the morning raring to individuate. We tend to experience one drive, one personality part at a time. In an ideal world, we'd naturally include the contrasting drive or part in turn. But life is not ideal. Because of imperfect parenting, unfriendly environments, and skewed cultural pressures, we often get stuck using either the left foot or the right foot, and we end up moving in loops of compulsive behavior. Imagine what happens when the charioteer pulls only on the left side of the reins. He's going to go in circles. Most of us tend to lose touch with the deeper and healthier urges to self-realization that would help us to be more balanced. About 100 years ago, Jung wrote, and here I quote, "The psyche of civilized man is no longer a self-regulating system, but could rather be compared to a machine whose speed regulation is so insensitive that it can continue to function to the point of self-injury." End of quote. Compulsively perfectionistic behavior is machine-like, and it is often dangerous. It's habitual and doesn't consider the effect on our well-being. And I'm afraid that we've become even more machine-like since when Jung was writing. While we might buy into the idea of becoming our, quote, best self, too often that best self is more like a public performance rather than a quest for inner harmony, a private symphony in which all our parts, both harmonious and dissonant, come together to create something new and whole. Jung believed that we have a responsibility to the world and to ourselves to realize our fullest personality, and that when we don't meet that responsibility, we engage in compulsive behavior. When we don't follow the urge to self-realization, we may end up with the more neurotic types of compulsion we see in workaholics, control freaks, obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, and those with extreme type A personality. We come loaded with energy for individuation, and if it doesn't flow into true self-realization, it overflows into other projects that don't serve us as well. Endless car washing, correcting the, quote, obvious shortcomings of others, and obsessively tweaking our hair so that it looks, quote, okay. Let's talk about a few examples of blocked individuation, compulsive behavior. Imagine that a woman is by nature a leader. She has an urge to use her strength, courage, and wisdom to take leadership in her job, family, or community. But circumstances have made that difficult. She's told she should be a caretaker and follower. Pursuing leadership could lead to rejection by those closest to her. But if she doesn't pursue leadership, she could also feel stuck and depressed, and she may engage in compulsive behavior about other things. The caretaking she does do may become infected with resentment, rigidity, control, and perfectionism. The healthy urge can find no outlet and comes out in less helpful ways. Or think of a man whose nature is creative. When he was young, he loved to work with clay, and as he grew older, he sculpted whenever he could. But he's been told by his family to go into finance and focus on making lots of money, rather than finding a realistic way to honor his creativity. His unmet need for creativity could lead to more destructive compulsive behavior, such as promiscuity, gambling, drinking, or drugs. Removing this blockage requires that we ask what we have left out of our personal development, and then risk bringing it into our life. What potentials have you not cultivated yet that need expression? If you can identify that, you can steer the energy where it really needs to go, rather than have it drive you in obsessive circles. Too often, one part of the personality drives us, not allowing us to move in the more balanced direction of self-realization. The charioteer represents the ego that takes the reins and follows directions from within. directions which may feel contradictory at times. But the unconscious often knows better than consciousness what we need, so we need to consult it. In another post, I described 4 types of compulsive personality, which we can also understand as 4 aspects of the compulsive personality. And roughly, these are teacher-leader, worker-doer, server-friend, and thinker-planner. This was episode 8 in the podcast. If we live in only one of these aspects, then we live in one type and don't achieve wholeness. At extremes, we become caricatures of the different types, each one having their own way of controlling and trying to be perfect. Each of these aspects have their positive potential and negative potential. In order to disengage from compulsive behavior, we can cultivate the positive aspects of each of them, especially the ones that have been left out. Doing so moves us toward growth and individuation, and in doing so, we become less likely to get caught in compulsive behavior. The point of describing these 4 types is not to pigeonhole anyone, but to show a path toward wholeness. It's not easy, but when we recognize this urge in us, a lot of life experience that had been disorienting begins to help us find our center. Psychological symptoms become signs of what's left out. When we are aware of the larger direction that individuation urges us in, we can steer its energy more effectively. You can find transcripts of this podcast with links to research sources and lots more at the Healthy Compulsive blog, www.thehealthycompulsive.com. If you'd like to subscribe to the Healthy Compulsive podcast, hit that subscribe button. And for a thorough guide to cultivating the positive potential of the compulsive personality, find my book on Amazon, The Healthy Compulsive, Healing Obsessive Compulsive Personality Disorder and Taking the Wheel of the Driven Personality. And if you find any of these helpful, let others know by leaving a review. Till next time, enjoy the drive.